Hello viewers, my name is Mr. Kevin Jacobs. I am an educator from John Baziga Secondary School in the BCM district in the Eastern Cape. Welcome to the ECDOE, the Eastern Cape Department of Education's broadcast studio. Today's lesson is about reconciliation in accounting paper 2. I will be covering this topic for your full understanding. Okay, as you guys know that this topic here is covered in paper 2, like I said. The marks normally ranges between 30 and 45 marks for this question. And normally it's being asked in question 1, but it can be asked in any other question as well. Now, when we look at reconciliation in paper 2, there are 3 types of reconciliation. The first one being bank reconciliation, second one creditors reconciliation, and the third one debtors reconciliation. Now, the structure how they normally ask reconciliation as a question is where they normally combined either bank reconciliation with creditors reconciliation with debtors reconciliation, or they can combine bank reconciliation with debtors reconciliation, or they can ask any of the reconciliations with any other topic, and they can combine it as in one type of question. For example, they can add VAT together with a reconciliation question. Now, it's important for us to know, grade 12s, why we do reconciliation as a business. The first reason why we do reconciliation is we need to identify if there's any mistakes or errors that took place, if there's any omissions. Omission means if there was no recording at all that took place for any transaction that took place, or maybe there was fraud that was committed. Hence, we need to reconcile our books. Also, when we have errors, we need to correct them, and that's why we do reconciliation on a monthly basis. If there were omissions, we also have to record those omissions in our necessary books. If there is fraud, we also have to investigate that type of fraud that took place and also take corrective action in order for it not to happen again. Also, we need to ensure that there's internal control of our bank, debtors as well as creditors, to keep track of transactions on a daily and a monthly basis. We also have to verify all receipts, payments, invoices, returns, etc. To also improve profitability. What do I mean by that? Remember, if money is being stolen, it will affect the business profit. If payments were made that was not supposed to be made, it will affect our profitability. Hence, if we control it early, it will then improve our profit overall. Also, reconciliation is done to decrease the risks such as theft from taking place and to improve our overall liquidity. Why liquidity? Because as we are dealing with debtors, bank and creditors, this impacts on our liquidity as a business overall. The focus of today's lesson is on bank reconciliation. Because of time, we can't do all 3 of our reconciliations. Now, we need to understand what is bank reconciliation. Now, in our notes that we have here, it states reconciliation is a process, meaning it's steps, where the bank account of the business in our T account or the general ledger is compared with the balance in our most recent bank statement that we get from our bank. Any differences? Tips on how to tackle bank reconciliation as a question. Always check whether outstanding deposits and EFTs from our previous bank reconciliation statement is now reflecting on our current bank statement. Because remember, in the previous one, let us say, for example, we are asked to do the reconciliation for January. We will have to go back to December. Previous reconciliation. We check in our January statement, is these outstanding deposits reflecting now in EFTs? And if they are reflecting, we will simply just tick them off to confirm that they are now reflecting. If any deposit or EFTs are not reflecting at all, then we record them as outstanding on the new reconciliation statement, for example, for January. If any deposits and EFTs are reflecting with the correct amount, very important, then you just simply tick them off. If the deposits and EFTs are reflecting, but with incorrect amounts, you circle those amounts, because you will need to reconcile them and fix them. You need to also investigate these errors that have taken place in order to determine who made the error. Was it our business or was it the bank? If we as the business made the error, very important, We correct those errors normally in our CRJ, CPJ, that's our cash receipt journal, cash payment journal, or in our bank account. When I say bank account, I'm talking about our T accounts. Okay? If the bank or the statement made the error, then we correct this normally in our bank reconciliation for our new month. Okay, now we'll also be giving you guys tips on how to tackle bank reconciliation overall. The first thing you need to do, guys, is if a balance that's reflecting in our previous, the balance of the bank account rather is given in the previous bank reconciliation, you use that balance as the opening balance for your bank account that you will be asked to do in the general ledger. So basically last month you had a closing balance. That closing balance of the previous month becomes your opening balance of the new month. The next step is to check which debits and credits on the bank statement was not recorded in the CRJ or the CPJ. You then record those. When I say those, I'm referring to these debits that you see at the top in the new CRJ, CPJ, or the bank account in the general ledger. After that, you have to identify any deposits and EFTs that are reflecting in the CRJ and the CPJ, but not, very important, on the bank statement. These will then be recorded where as outstanding on the new bank reconciliation statement. The typical errors, grade 12s, that we normally get in reconciliation with the bank reconciliation is when there is incorrect amounts. Incorrect amounts that were recorded, for example, 696 Rand was recorded instead of 969. The amount looks similar, but they are different. Hence, we need to correct that error. There can also sometimes be duplication error. What do I mean by duplication error? Instead of a payment going off our bank statement as a once-off payment, it goes off as a double payment within the same month. Then we need to also reconcile that. Also, sometimes there are incorrect debits or credits, meaning it does not relate to our business. Instead, it maybe relates to a different business, but the bank accidentally deducted the money from our account. We also have to reconcile that. Then when it comes to fraud, the typical fraud that is normally identified, for example, the amount that was deposited in our bank account, it differs from the amount that we have recorded in our journal. For example, for the month, maybe we had a total of 30,000 Rand, but then what was actually deposited was 20,000 Rand. And then we normally need to investigate what happened to the remaining 10,000 Rand that was not deposited. Also, an amount of the EFT can also differ on the bank statement compared to what was actually recorded in our CPJ, for example. And then when it comes to omissions, normally sometimes there is debit orders and stop orders that are not recorded, bank charges also not recorded, and deposits that maybe a tenant makes can also maybe not be recorded. Now I want us to work through an exercise together. I've taken this exercise from last year's May-June 2024 paper. It was written by the learners who rewrote, who were not happy with their marks, or those maybe who failed the subject as they applied to rewrite, and this is the paper that they wrote, and this question came directly from that. States here, question 1.1, bank reconciliation. The information relates to Scott traders. Very important, you need to identify whose books are you asked to do. In this case, you're asked to do Scott traders' books. The owner of this business is Scott Salazar. The business received their official bank statement from their bank that they are banking with. This is very important, guys. On the 25th of each month. It means any transaction that takes place after the 25th will not be reflecting on that bank statement. Therefore, it might then be outstanding. Then we would record that normally in our bank reconciliation statement. Then what are you being asked to do here? You've been asked to calculate the correct bank account balance at the end of May, the 31st, and after you're done with that, you then have to prepare also a bank reconciliation statement on the 31st of May. The total marks here, as you can see, 8 marks for calculating the bank account balance and 6 marks for completing the bank reconciliation statement. Now with the first question, sometimes they will ask you in the exam to do a new CRJ and a new CPJ, right? But in this example here, they just ask you simply to do a bank account, okay? Let us go into the details. You will notice here in the information, it states the following. The bookkeeper calculated the provisional bank balance as a positive, very important, a positive, meaning it's favorable, 9,050 rand at the end of May. Using the what? The bank account balance and the totals from the CRJ and CPJ. It means they've used the previous amount, which is this amount here, this 4170, and they've used the provisional total in the CRJ, the provisional total in the CPJ. They added and subtracted those three amounts, and they came to an amount of 9,050 rand. So when you are doing the first question, here at the top where they ask you to calculate the correct bank account balance, you will start off with this favorable balance here, positive balance here of 9,050 rand. And then you now have to identify which transactions, for example, need to be recorded in our bank account balance by adding and subtracting figures that is not in your previous CRJ and CPJ, that might reflect only in your bank statement, or any errors that might have occurred that came from our side. Okay. When we continue reading here, you will notice that the figures from the previous April reconciliation has been given as well. Here it states unfavorable balance in the bank statement, it's 1,550. And then the next one is outstanding deposit last month was 4,000 rand. And then we have another outstanding deposit of 15,000 rand. Then there were also two EFTs outstanding. The first one, 7,800. The second one, 5,480. And then we had the favorable bank account balance as our general ledger of 4,170. Now, it's important for us to note at the bottom regarding what they've already done the work for you, where they investigated the previous reconciliation with the statement of May, and they gave you the following notes to take note of. It states here, the deposit of the 16th of April, meaning you must now go and look at the date here and go and look at the statement, the deposit date that is being given here on the 16th. The amount is 4,000 rand. They are referring to that one. That deposit of 4,000 rand and the EFT 632, which is the 7,800 rand here, were reflected on the May bank statement. So now these two, you can simply just tick off. Why? Because they are no longer outstanding. The second note here is the deposit on the 26th of April. There's the date. You go and look at the 26th of April. There's the 26th of April. It refers to this 15,000 rand. It states here, the deposit on the 26th of April appeared as 10,000 rand on the bank statement. We showed it as 15,000 rand in our books. The cashier, meaning the person who was in charge of this deposit, at the time was dismissed for theft, and this amount has to be written off. Now, please take note of this, grade 12s. They are not saying that 10,000 rand must be written off. The 10,000 rand was deposited, but it was supposed to be 15. So you will have to get the difference between the 15 and the 10, which will then be 5,000 rand that you will then have to go and write off. Now remember, this 15, when we initially recorded it, it was in our cash receipt journal. But the amount that was deposited was 10,000 rand. So for us to reduce this 15,000 rand, we have to record the difference of 5,000 rand in our cash payment journal. But we are not asked in this example here to do the cash payment journal. We are asked to do the bank account balance. So the 5,000 rand here, you will then have to go and subtract. From which amount? From this 9,050 rand that we have here at the top. This 9,050 rand right here. Okay? I hope you're still with me, guys. Then the next item here, EFT 633 appeared on the May bank statement with the correct amount of 4580. So EFT 633, which is this one here, there is the amount that we recorded, 5480. It states it reflects on the May bank statement. It was last month outstanding. This month it's not outstanding, it is reflecting. However, it reflected with the correct amount of 4580. Now what you have to do is you have to take this amount here, 5480, you subtract it from this amount here of 4580. You get the difference. Now that difference you have to record somewhere. It's either going to be in your CRJ and your CPJY. It's because we made the mistake as the business, not the bank. Okay? So if a payment was overstated, it means it was made more than what it was supposed to be. The difference have to be recorded somewhere. Will it be in the CRJ or the CPJ? Because we are reducing the payment, right, we have to record that difference in our CRJ. Move on to the next part. Information C. It states here a comparison of the May bank statement, meaning the current bank statement, with the journals revealed the following. The first that it revealed was bank charges on the bank statement only amounted to 310. So in this case here, it's basically on omission. So we then have to record that 310 in our CPJ. But because we're not asked to do the CPJ, we're simply going to subtract this 310 that we see here from our two amounts that we were calculating earlier on. The 9,050, sorry guys, the 9,050 that we have here. As I was saying, guys, this 310 that you see here, it states here it's bank charges on the bank statement only, right? Therefore, it's not reflecting in our books. So this amount here then has to be recorded with this amount here that we see here, this 9,050. So basically, our calculation will be 9,050, right, minus the 5,000 rand of earlier on, minus this 310. Because this 5,000 rand that we see here, we have lost that amount of money because of theft. This 310 that you see here, we are also going to reduce this 9,050 because that is a payment ultimately. Okay. Then we continue. It states here by number 2, a debit order for advertising. For advertising, which we know is an expense, for 1,780 was not recorded in the CPJ. And was also duplicated on the bank statement. The bank will correct the error next month. So remember, we did not record this 1780 in our cash payment journal. So basically, we again have to now go here and minus the amount. Minus the amount of 1,780. But because there is a duplication now that the bank made an error with, that 1,780, the second one, has to be recorded in our bank reconciliation statement. Then we go to number 3. The bank statement reflected a direct deposit. Direct deposit meaning money came into the business bank account for 25,000 rand. This is an error by the payer. The bank will then reverse the entry the next month. Here, we did not make the mistake. The bank made the mistake. So they will then correct it the following month. But in the meantime, we still have to do a reconciliation. So this amount here will then be recorded as an error in our bank reconciliation statement only. Then number 4 states here, interest on the fixed deposit of 1,060 appeared on the statement, but not in the journals. So now this interest on the fixed deposit must now then be added here. It must be added to the bank amount, which is 1,000. Let me go back, 1,060. 1,060. And then the next one, a deposit of 17,500 rand, it states here, appeared on the CRJ dated the 27th of May 2024. So it is in our books, we recorded it. However, because, like I said earlier on, because of this timing issue here at the top, where I ask you to take note of the date when we get our statement, that deposit now will become an outstanding deposit that will be recorded in our bank reconciliation statement. And then the last one, EFT 819411880 was recorded in the CPJ, but again, just like the previous one, on the 28th of May, because again of this timing issue here at the top, where we get our statement, this second figure here will now become an outstanding EFT. And then the last one, very important, it states here, the May bank statement reflected a balance of R question mark. That will then be your balancing figure. So now, basically what you have to do is you have to go and calculate your bank account a balance here of 9050 plus the amount of 5,000, minus the amount of 5,000 minus 310 minus 1780 plus 1060. That will then give you a bank account balance. Now that bank account balance will then be transferred to your bank reconciliation statement as the bank account balance in our general ledger. Then these two figures that we see here will then be this figure that we see here, the 17,500 and this 11,800 will then be outstanding deposit, outstanding EFT in our bank reconciliation statement. And then the next one is the error that we see here that was duplicated, the one here, number 2. This one here. One of this 1780 will then be recorded in the bank reconciliation statement. And then the 25,000 Rand that we see here as well will then also reflect in our bank reconciliation statement. Okay, what I'm going to do now, I'll be doing the completed bank reconciliation statement. Okay, grade 12s, as you see here, what I've done is I've shown you the calculation. The 9,000 that you see here, 9,050 by question 1.1.1 was the balance that was calculated beforehand. We subtracted that 5,000 rand that was stolen by one of the cashiers. Then we subtracted our 310 rand, which was the bank charges. Then we subtracted one of those debit orders for the advertising of 1780. Then we added that 1,060 rand that was part of the previous information. If you can remember, the interest on the fixed deposit that we did not record at all. So when we do all of that, we get a favorable or positive 3,020 rand. And once you have this 3,020 rand that you see here, you take that amount straight to your bank reconciliation because it's favorable. Remember, if it's favorable in our T accounts, it will then be a debit balance. That is why when you look at the reconciliation here, all of my reconciliation details start with either the word credit and debit. Reason why it starts with those words there, it's because when you start with the word debit or credit, you know exactly in which column the figure must go. For example, this balance that we calculated here of 3,020. It's a favorable balance, and I started with the word debit balance as per bank account, and I put the figure in the correct side. Why? Because if you take that 3020 and you put it in the credit side, all the effort you put in to get this 3020, you are going to lose the marks there. Here I've shown you the full calculation. It's completed. You will notice here that the amounts, as we said earlier on, 9,050 was the initial amount that was calculated for us that we took into our calculation of our correct bank account balance. Then we had to subtract our 5,000 rand, and that was the amount that was stolen. It was the difference between the 15,000 rand and the 10,000 rand. Then we had to also subtract our bank charges. Then we also had to subtract the 1,780 rand. That was the debit order that we did not record, and the 1,060 here is the interest on the fixed deposit that we did not record as well. So when we do all of that, we get a final answer of 3,020 rand. And on your calculator, normally you will see whether the figure is favorable or not, because on the calculator it will show either without a sign or with a negative sign. In this case here, it was positive, hence the positive or favorable balance in our bank account. When we come to the reconciliation now, we will start off our details here with stating debit balance as per the bank account. Because if this balance here is favorable, right, it will normally be recorded where on the debit side of the general ledger or the T account. That is why we start with the word debit balance as per bank account. And the reason why we put the word debit here in front is to indicate to us in which side of the two columns must the figure go. And in this case here, it goes on the debit column, right? Then we continue with the rest of the information it must reflect in our bank reconciliation. The next one was the duplication error that was made. Remember this one here, right? It means the amount was reflected 2 times on our bank statement. So one of them has to be corrected. Hence, we take the 1,070 rand right here on the credit side because the bank made a debit. Therefore, to correct that second debit, we have to do an opposite end. That is why the detail here will be credit, incorrect debit, one of them. Hence, the word credit in front implies that the amount must go where? On the credit side. Then also, there was a deposit that was made into our account, but the money does not belong to us. It was an error. So that 25,000 rand that you see here, that one also will have to be recorded in our bank reconciliation. Hence now, in our bank reconciliation, we state debit, incorrect credit, because it was credited to our bank statement, right? But it doesn't belong to us. So therefore, we'll have to do an opposite entry and say debit, incorrect credit, and the amount goes into the debit column. Then we continue going forward. There was also these 2 outstanding EFTs and deposits that must also be recorded. The 17,500 rand here is outstanding deposit. Then that amount we will record in our bank reconciliation right here as a 17,000 rand credit outstanding deposits. And then the last one that was outstanding was the EFT. The EFT here is an amount of 11,800 Rand. 11,800 Rand that was outstanding, hence also that amount we have to record here in our bank reconciliation as debit outstanding EFT, and there's the amount 11,800. Now, the previous information told us that the bank statement reflected a outstanding balance, and this figure here, there was a question mark, meaning it is a balancing figure that you need to determine. Now, what you have to do to get that balance, you have to go and calculate which side between the debit and the credit side has a bigger balance. Now, when we calculate here earlier on, the biggest balance here, or biggest side rather, with an amount was the debit side that gave us a total amount of 39,900 Rand. When you have that, you duplicate the answer and write it also on the credit side. Then what you simply do is you work in reverse. You take this amount and you subtract what you have, which was these two amounts. And once you subtract those two amounts, you will then get the balancing figure, which in this case, the balance is on the credit side. And if it's a credit balance on the bank statement, it is always favorable. That is why now here we would write credit balance as per bank statement. Okay, I hope that is clear enough, guys. We can't discuss the creditors reconciliation yet. We will do it in another session, as well as the debtors reconciliation. Okay, grade 12s, we have come to the end of our lesson. You can leave your questions and comments. Don't forget to leave the name of your school so we can give you a shout out. Please share, recommend, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching. See you on our next lesson.